Hello and welcome to That British Homestead. Today, well, what we're going to do is tackle these bindweeds. This is another potato patch within my second allotment, and the bindweed here has got completely out of control. It feels like every time I get the other allotment patch really well weeded, this one goes absolutely crazy, and it's just about having time to clear it all. So I thought I would take a little time today and go ahead and clear it. So bindweed is going to be one of the things that it takes years to be able to clear. I am just weakening it, as I always say, by removing the top foliage. And it's a shame though, because as I'm working, there's absolutely tons of bees and things that are enjoying the flowers, but it's no good for the old potatoes. Now my potatoes are done for the season, so it's not really that much of a big deal, and I'm really just taking this off because I don't want it to spread and to make it look a little more appetizing to the old eyeballs, but really it doesn't matter too much. Now, loads of people do struggle with bindweed. The best thing for bindweed to get rid of it is just absolutely mullering it with like some Roundup or something. That's not really an option if you want to grow anything anytime soon in the ground. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be removing as much of it as I can by just literally pulling it out by hand, and then after a while I'm going to go ahead and weaken it to the point where it doesn't really come back. Now the allotment that is next to my allotment, as you can see in the background, it is incredibly weedy, and I don't think it's being worked this year. I don't know what's going on with them. I hope that they are well, but it does mean that this is like creeping through, and it does make it a little bit frustrating, but what can you do? Now this allotment, when I first got it, it had weeds up like as tall as I am, about 5 foot, and it was so frustrating to keep coming down here and seeing the weeds being so tall. However, every single year that I have this allotment, it is getting just slightly easier with the perennial weeds. I don't really have an issue with annual weeds. They're not really a massive issue for me, but the perennial weeds are a little bit annoying. So it is something that I have to kind of just pick away at. And as you can see, this time of year is absolutely beautiful for growing and being able to have things boom, but that also means that the weeds are also doing that, and I'm telling you, you blink and this stuff is everywhere, and it is so irritating. I think what I'm going to do in the corner here, because I would like that to be a decent path, I am going to cover that in black plastic, and I'm probably going to put some wood chip over the top of it so that it is very nice, like a little walkway that is going to help suppress that bindweed. The issue that I'm having too this time of year is that it's very wet still, so where I normally burn off my bindweed, I'm having issues with it not lighting. So I did go ahead and try to light a fire on this day, but everything's just so wet, it's just not going to work. So I do have a weed mountain that I do need to burn, but it's just not working at the moment because it's just simply not burning, which is super frustrating. But like I said, I'm just going to go ahead and spend a couple of days just picking away at this, and soon most of the weeds are going to be gone, and I'll be so much happier than I am now, because you can see it's like an absolute carpet here where I've just let it go out of control, which is very bad. I shouldn't have let it get to that point, but I find where it's out of the sight of the front of the allotment, you're like, well, I don't see it and I don't go over here, so you just let it go out of control, which is not very good. I think I'm going to try to walk around and look at things a little bit more, perhaps, or I'm going to make more of a conscious effort from working from the back of the allotment to the front of the allotment, because normally what I do is when I weed pick, I start at the front of the allotment and then work my way back. So it is an issue when you are doing it like that, because this is always like the last priority area, and I mean you've got areas at the top which are completely utterly weed free. Most of this allotment is most of this allotment is cultivated, of course, but most of it doesn't have this sort of level of weeds. So yeah, it is important. And I know in my last allotment audit, which the council does every so often, they did highlight that this pit was a little bit weedier than they would like, and they're completely right about that. So as you can see, I am very gracefully pulling these up and trying to get them away. And I mean, you make a bigger impact with bindweed, what it looks like you do anyway, by just pulling them, and that makes it so much nicer to make sure that it's kind of like coming off, and it makes you feel like you've done quite a lot. However, it is the bindweed that's in the ground that's the big issue, and the roots are quite just a pain. It's just a pain in the bum to get up because they are rhizomes, so if you leave a tiny little bit, they'll break off into another plant. Another thing that I'm incredibly excited about having, yes, my old friend, the stinging nettle. I absolutely hate stinging nettles. I think stinging nettles are like my least favourite thing in the entire world. So I'm going to go ahead and probably pull these out. As you can see, I'm starting to. I'm going to cover up it with black plastic. 3 months and these bad boys will be extinct, which will be very exciting. And you can see on the other side of the inside of the fence, there's tons of stinging nettles that are growing. So it's one of those things that they will creep back over. But if I do put black plastic over here, because it's grown over the matting that I've put down, so I do need to make sure that I'm getting this area sort of sorted once and for all, because it's just not good enough by far. And to be honest, in the far corner there, I could have storage there, I could have a lean-to, I could have all sorts of things going on. And although I've like pretty much got the whole entire place cultivated, and that, this is my shame corner. And it's nice to see and nice to get a little bit of the work done so far, you know what I mean? So it is something that I have been putting off, which is not good. But I still, go ahead, stick my audio book on, and then we can just sit and get this sort of done. And you kind of go into your own world. It's so nice going down the allotment, because you can go down the allotment and you're like in a really bad mood, or you're super stressed out with home life, super stressed out with work, and you just get lost in nature, and sooner or later you're like completely utterly in your own little world and have absolutely no interest at all in like the problems that you were thinking about before. And it's a great de-stressor, and I absolutely love spending time down here. Even if I'm not harvesting, it is fantastic just to have that sort of time of your own thoughts. Even if you don't want to listen to anything, sometimes I sit down here and just listen to the birds, which is great. Sadly, we do get a lot of traffic because we live in the UK, and I'm not going to lie to you, everywhere in the UK is just a little short distance away from a road. But I'm going to be super excited to have this area back. I might even put a little bench here so that when I come down the allotment, I have somewhere to sit and look at my hard work going. And it's so funny because in the winter, you have so little weeds that you're like, this is so easy. I don't understand why everyone struggles with weeds all year round. And the leading issue with people leaving allotments is weeds. They're not being able to get a hold of the weeds, and I completely see why. This allotment, I know I always say it, but it was so unmanageable when I got it. And although it looks really overgrown here, there's only a very small portion of it. And within a week or two, it will be really turned around, hopefully. If not, you can really hold me accountable for that and be like, no, you said you were going to do it. But it would be nice if I get this area into some sort of condition where I'm going to be able to use it effectively. I use the shed behind me as storage for loads of different things like fertilisers and things like that, ground sheets and things like that. So it is important that I have access to it, but to be honest, I kind of use it mainly in the spring, autumn and winter than in the summer. In the summer, I don't really ever go into that room, so you can see why it can get to this sort of state if you don't go over here, which just kind of goes to seeing a job and not leaving it, which is so easy to do, especially when you work full time, have a family, etc. It is one of them things that can get on top of you, like anything can. So it is important that we spend time doing that. But it is also important to like explain to people that, you know, everyone has weeds and that's okay. No one should be expected to have a absolutely flawless, perfect allotment at all times. It's just not feasible. People are going to go on holiday. People are going to have a life outside their allotments. Of course they are. And I'm a person in the world as well. So I'm going to have those same issues. And of course I am. But it is okay. And the main thing is if you continue to try, it will get improved again. And although it feels like you have fallen and you've done something and it's really, really terrible and it's not something that you want, or you're not gardening in the way that you wanted, it isn't the end. And it's important to just take a step back and go, look, okay, yeah, I see this too, and make sure that you're doing something actively for it. And I think when it comes to such a large area, it's easy to neglect little bits, which I know I'm guilty of, especially this bit at the very end, because like I said, who works from the bottom back? But I'm telling you, after I did this, I felt so much better for achieving something that day and really doing the best I could to clear this. And like I said, this time of year, these weeds grow super quickly. I just wish that I could grow plants as well as I can grow bindweed and stinging nettles. Then I would be amazing. I could probably feed the world. But these are, I always think that when I'm like pulling them apart, I'm just like, why isn't my sweet potato growing this well? Because you imagine if sweet potato growed this vibrantly in the UK, how incredible that would be. I have sweet potato vines on the other side of the allotment and they aren't even as long as my arm yet. And I mean, these weren't here the other day, so you can imagine how fast these grow. And every time they touch the ground, they are rooting. So it is super important that you go ahead and find that. And interestingly, I don't know this yet, but do you see where I'm pulling all of this bindweed out? And I'm like, oh, there's a lot of bees here. That's nice. I like bees. Well, as I'm pulling this out, I find a beehive just in there, just in the back, next to the shed, somewhere along there. I didn't get too close for obvious reasons, and then I had to call the beekeeping society. I've got a friend in there, so I phoned them and they were like, oh, didn't you want bees? I was like, yeah, but like I wanted bees in a hive, I didn't want bees on me. So they were friendly bees, so I got really close to them and they were just chillaxing near me, buzzing around. So they weren't vicious or anything. And I think they're going to be picked up maybe next week because they are honeybees. Because there were people that did honeybees on the allotment. And I believe a swarm got out a little while ago. And I think it swarmed again. And they've just found their way into this bush sort of area. So I did have to cut my cleaning a little bit short on the basis that I had to call the committee over, and they came over and was like, oh, you can see it now, I'm like, there's a lot of bees. They had to come over and like assess the situation and decide what to do, etc. Because as it's renting, you kind of have to tell the committee what's going on if you have any issues. So I went ahead and did that, and they were really nice about it and gave me some numbers to call. But I'd already called the beekeeping society near me, and they're going to come over and send someone. So hopefully they'll get sorted out. But as you can see, as we're going through, you might be able to see a few bees swarming around me, and it's because in here there's a lovely bee's nest, which is really exciting, isn't it? You can see them starting to go round. There was a few wasps as well. I think they were just there because it was exciting. But I thought best off leave this area alone until we get the professionals to come in and sort it out, because I'm just a little bit worried more that I'm going to hurt them, because they were quite mild and not, they didn't really bother that I was so close to their nest. They didn't really care. But I just thought, considering I'm stressing them out, I'm going to go ahead and clean these stinging nettles instead, because those stinging nettles need to be done as well. So yeah, I have to say this area, each time I tackle this particular area, it is getting a little bit easier. I absolutely despise stinging nettles, and I think that's why I've kind of left it to lastminute.com, is because I didn't want to do the stinging nettles, and stinging nettles are super rubbish. But they are coming out super easy now. This is a no dig bed. Just because it's no dig doesn't mean that it's no weeds, and it does get a little bit easier each time that you go ahead and pull the stinging nettle, especially if you stay on top of it like I didn't. But as you can see here, where I have only just piled up the compost, etc., they're coming out super easily. And I've pulled them out of this bed a few times, but they do spread very quickly. And it's one of those things that, like I said, you have to keep on top of it. I did have 2 weeks off of coming down the allotment. At one point, do not worry about my birds. We get friends to cover us. So when they go away, I look after their birds. And then when I go away, they look after mine. So that probably didn't help in the old weeding situation. But, you know, like I said, we are humans too. And we do things outside in the world as well. My little girl's birthday is in August, so we'll probably, obviously, not come down on her birthday. I know what you're thinking, why not? And we're going to take her out, I think, to the zoo or something like that. So it is important to, like, make sure that I've put some systems in place and I've cleared most of these weeds so it doesn't impact. But I literally can't believe how these are growing so vibrantly, but everything else in my allotment feels so slow and sluggish. So perhaps I've got a green thumb when it comes to perennial weeds, you know, and not anything else. But I did go ahead and pull these all out, and I did get a pretty decent amount of beans here as well. And I'm just going to make a conscious effort, just like I do with the what they call the berries on the other side of the allotment. I'm going to make a conscious commitment to myself that I will weed this area and I will not let it get to this stage again, because, well, it's just horrible doing it at this stage when they're much smaller. It's just so much easier and nicer to do. And I'm going to go ahead and make sure that I am just staying on top of it and making sure that even my no-dig beds don't get all weedy. And I do think the no-dig beds can be quite tricky to go ahead and cultivate, because the weeds do grow quite nicely through it. But it is one of those commitments that I need to be making, obviously. So yeah. I know that I can't possibly be the only one who have weeds, but I do try to give like a full and accurate show of my allotment, and sometimes I show weeding where I'm not doing very much, so it does make it nice where you can see that sometimes I am absolutely like weeding things that are taller than I am. So I try to be honest as much as possible. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing. I can't believe so many of us are found our little community, which is really exciting for me anyway. And I do really appreciate all your feedback and all of your comments and things like that. Some of them are absolutely amazing, and if you do write to me, I pretty much always reply. I'm not going to say I reply the same day, but I pretty much always reply. So if you want to and you feel like you want to leave a comment, please go ahead and do. If you have any sort of suggestions that you can think of that I can go ahead and do to help tackle this problem, I'll be more than happy to listen to them. So don't feel like you have to be shy. Don't be shy, help me out, and I'm more than happy to return the favour. So it's a win-win situation basically. So if you haven't done already, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.